near here. Any of you folks remember Myrna Loy? How about Gary Cooper? That's been a few years ago, hasn't it? Myrna Loy was born in Raidersburg, moved here when she was 3 years old, moved in 3 doors down from Gary Cooper. In her memoir, she talks about sliding by Judge Cooper's door on her sled in the wintertime. Gary Cooper's father was a Montana Supreme Court justice. If you have an interest in ghost towns at all, you'll find a couple of those in the area. One is located 23 miles northwest called Marysville. This is where Thomas Cruise founded his famous drum up and mine. Thomas Cruise was a poor Irish prospector, came to Helena, literally struck it rich. He became a millionaire. He donated large sums of money to the construction of the cathedral as well as Carroll College, other buildings in the downtown area. Today you can still see remnants of that drum up and mine in Marysville. The other ghost town is called Elkhorn, located 47 miles south. Elkhorn is one of those unspoiled ghost towns. Nothing commercial there whatsoever.
Ghost towns.
No, but they have some cool vanities, I've heard.
Coming up on the right, just beyond this tan brick building in the background is a stone structure. This was Charlie Russell's studio in the early days. He painted on the main level and he bunked in the loft. If you're not familiar with Charlie Russell, he was a cowboy artist in the early days, noted for the details in his drawings, paintings, bronze work. You can see some of his work back at the Historical Museum. Now, as we round this corner, to the left is Montana's original governor's mansion, built in 1888. 20 rooms, 7 fireplaces, housed 8 of our Montana governors since 1913. That's open for tours, noon to 4. Tours run on the hour. Beautifully restored on the inside. Just come to the front door and the porch there, and they'll open up the door on the hour. Coming up on the left on the corner, brown brick home, was the home of Wilbur Fisk Sanders. He was commonly called Colonel Sanders, although I don't believe he was related to Kentucky Fried. He was one of our first U.S. senators, along with T.C. Power in 1890. He was a lawyer. He gained his fame prosecuting road agents in Bennington, Virginia City in 1862 and 63. Now, if you know much about Montana history, Sheriff Plummer would be a familiar name. He was the sheriff in the territory. Only he was an outlaw. The only answer was a vigilante law, law by the people. Oftentimes, trial took place to the hanging tree. A vote was taken, guilty, hanged. No appeal process in those days.
Did you see any?
Coming up from the right, St. Helena Cathedral. This has been patterned after the votive cathedral in Vienna, Austria, as well as the cathedral in Cologne, Germany. Construction of the building began in 1908. It was dedicated in 1914. That construction made possible mostly by a huge donation from Thomas E. Cruise. If you remember, he was an Irish prospector, came to Helena, struck it rich. Stained glass windows were commissioned in Germany, came across the plains piece by piece. Open during the day, you can browse through there till about 5 each evening if you want to, if there isn't a service going on, of course. Well, look to the top, to the front of the building, way up on the tower, you'll be able to see 2 gold-plated crosses. The crosses are 12 foot high, 6 foot across. As we come around the front, notice the space between the crosses. I want to tell you a story about the space. It was the first Special Service Force. These were paratroopers and pilots that trained at Fort Harrison, fought in foreign wars. A few years ago, they're having a reunion. Like many reunions go, one of the pilots had a little too much to drink, took a $100 bet. He could fly his airplane right between the 2 crosses. He went to the airport, picked up his aircraft, came back to this area of blue between the crosses. When he returned to the airport, he became a staunch member of the infantry. You see, his pilot's license was jerked. He never flew again. They did measure the wingspan of his aircraft, found that he had 3 inches to spare. Well, ahead of us is a mountain, Mount Helena, one of our city parks. Many trail traverse up the side of the mountain. Second largest city park in our nation, second only to Central Park in New York City. Coming up on the right, Holter Museum of Art, a fine museum in town. Building began in 1913 as the local Ford dealership. Oh, that's on your boarding pass, by the way. Free gift for you if you get to the downtown area. Stop in and see these folks. That's good up till 7 days from the date on top of the boarding pass. Now, right now, we're dropping down into the bottom of what is known as Last Chance Gulch. This is the downtown area. A little later, the tour will be coming back this direction. At that time, I'll tell you the story of how Helena began. Coming up on the right, the light tan building. This was a carriage house in the early days. Housed the carriages and horses for the elite who lived on the Upper West Side. We'll be going through the Upper West Side a little later in the tour. Then coming up at the end of the block to the right is Farmers Market, open till 1 this afternoon. Look to the left at the end of the block, you'll see a tall red brick building. The Montana Club had its beginning in early day Helena. This is the club for the elite, I mean very elite. In order to be a member of this club, you had to have $1 million and be male, by the way. Well, the original membership record shows 136 members. The year was 1885. Still a private club today. You don't have to have, I'm sorry, it's not a private club anymore. This spring it opened up to the public.